right, you guys. Well, I have 4 o'clock on my clock. All right, so everything's being recorded. So thanks again for coming tonight. This is actually lecture number 2 of this series. We're doing a couple of series, and the whole point of this series is to just kind of take a look at your diet and see if there's something that you're doing that you might be sabotaging your own progress. You know, I work with a lot of clients and a lot of patients come to me and they've made what they think are very relevant changes, and then unfortunately their body's not responding, and it's, you know, it's a buzzkill, that's for sure. So now we want to talk about, you know, what is it about body fat that's so hard to get rid of, and what actually sabotages our progress. So that's what we're going to talk about today. You know, let's talk about what it is. First of all, look, we have to have it. We cannot get rid of all of our body fat, and that's some of the problems. But it performs a very big function in the body, so that's why we have to have it. Unfortunately, many of us have too much body fat based on our body composition, and there are certain foods that build this body. So for some of us that say just the occasion or just the ice cream, well, you're probably sabotaging your progress big time. So of course I have to always give you some statistics. So on the average, 1 of every 3 adults is actually considered obese, which is about 36% of our population. We're number 1 globally for our population being overweight. We're number 1 out of everybody. Let's see, on the bottom of the list is Japan and Korea. So maybe we need to be eating a little bit more fish and rice and riding our bicycle to work. By 2030, an estimated 20% of the world's population will be obese. That's pretty disheartening, especially since obesity comes along all these comorbid conditions like diabetes and things like that. And unfortunately, when we look at our kids are overweight and obese. And we do know that kids that are overweight and obese will grow up to be adults to be overweight and obese. There is definitely an ethnic disparity when it comes to genetics. And I think we all know the complications of being overweight and obese, but it's not just having excessive weight, it's having excessive fat that actually hurts us. So I don't want you to think just because you're in a normal body weight, if you have excessive fat, you too are still at risk of a lot of the same comorbid conditions as if you were obese. So that's why we have to always think about fat loss, not weight loss. And I always try to teach my patients and clients, look, you can't just get on a scale and then judge your whole diet by what you see on that particular scale. You need to get a body composition reading. And what's so great about Glen Eagles, at least you have the opportunity to do that with the InBody. So I definitely encourage you to do that because just knowing your weight is not telling you the whole picture, and you need the whole picture in order to set goals. And you have to also remember that we have all different body shapes and sizes as well. Let me see if there's a next picture here. Yeah, I'm going to show you that in a second. So I might have patients and clients that come to me that have unrealistic expectations. You know, maybe they're seeing a picture of them when they were and 30s. Well, you know what? If we're in our 50s, 60s, and 70s, we might not get back to that body type just because we're older now. We're going to be losing muscle mass. Genetics, hormones, all of that plays a part in it as well. And of course, we've got different body types. So when you look at something like this, I would classify myself as probably this O type, an endomorph. Now, I don't really have large bones, but I definitely have a beefier structure. So I have very big muscles. So I tend to grow these muscles a lot if I do certain exercises. So this is my body. A V type is called a mesomorph. They have a medium-sized bone structure and an athletic body. And then the I type is usually smaller bones, thinner limbs. So a person with the I type would never be able to get the muscle structure like an O type. You're just not genetically predisposed. And the same counterpart for men. Okay, so I just like to show you this picture so we can stay realistic about our body as we're changing our body composition. So me as an O type, I'm not expecting to be an I type ever. I'm just expecting to be in maybe a more O type body. Okay, so maybe I can develop more muscle structure here and, some more cut definition. Now, I know I always show you this because I'm always trying down your throat, no pun intended, but we need to look at what our body fat is. We just do, because if we don't, this is the root of all evil. The more fat you have, the more illness you can have. Okay, the more fat you have, the less I'm going to be able to see your muscle structure. Okay, so that's why this is a really important number to get on that scale. So I would fall within this range, 23 to 35%. Now, I'm very honest with my clients and patients, because we're a family. I'm trying to help you. And, I'd like to also tell you about my struggles. I'm probably in the higher of the 30s. I'm like 33, 34%. So this is something I definitely want to improve as well. Unfortunately, and I'm not trying to use this as an excuse, but unfortunately, I'm on a lot of steroid hormones, which makes it very difficult. I'll never get to 23% again. That's out the window. Okay, but if I can get to 30%, I'd be really, really happy. Right now, I'm at the higher end. So it's challenging. So that's why even if somebody came to me, looking to change their body comp, also have to look at what your medications were as well. So what exactly is fat tissue? Fat tissue is called adipose tissue. It's made up of adipocytes. And at one time, we thought that fat was inert, that it had absolutely no function in terms of just, keeping some cushion and helping you stay insulated. But now we know it plays an endocrine role, which is interesting. And we have two different types of body fat, the brown fat and we have the white fat. Now, if there was a way that we could change all of our white fat to brown fat, that would be really ideal, because brown fat is very metabolic. It actually generates body heat. And this is actually what it looks like, in a cartoon picture. Right. So brown fat is very metabolic. It's something that, the little babies have, that little baby fat, right? And then as they're growing, that baby fat goes away. Well, in some of our children. And then the white fat, these are the storage units of our fat. So what's really interesting is that genetically we're predisposed to how many fat cells we have in our body. And there are certain times in our life where we actually create more fat cells. So I'm going to show you that statistic in a second. So when you lose body fat, you don't lose the cell, you just shrink it. Okay, this is storage, this white stuff in here. This is the fat. So when you're burning this fat, the cell just gets smaller. And that's why sometimes it's so hard to keep our body fat away, because you start to sabotage yourself and it just fills it back up. It's like a gas tank. It empties and then fills back up. And unfortunately, the white fat is what causes illness, especially gathered around the visceral area. The visceral area is called the abdominal area. And when you think about what organs are in that area, right? Your heart, your stomach, your intestines, your liver, your spleen, your kidneys. So if you've got layers of fat, let me tell you, I've seen surgery, right? Because I work for a surgical department. And I've seen body cavities opened, and I'm looking at these organs, and they're filled with fat. I guess a good way to explain it is if you've ever butchered a chicken and you see all this fat, that yellow fat that's all over the place, that's what happens to the human body too. And the fat is laying on top of these organs. So you can imagine that can really cause a lot of serious illness like diabetes, cancer, heart disease, etc. Okay, so here's the good news. Every year, whether you are fat or thin, whether you lose or gain weight, 10% of your fat cells actually die. Okay, because cells don't live forever. But they regenerate. Okay, so every year those cells that die are replaced with new fat cells. It's kind of like your red blood cells. Your red blood cells die every 120 days. They die and then they regenerate. They die, they regenerate. Same thing with fat cells. How depressing is And this is what's even worse. Research shows that when we gain new fat cells, they develop in new areas of our body, while the existing fat cells simultaneously get larger at the same time. So what this is actually saying, I have some clients that say to me, look, I want to go get some liposuction. All right, go get some liposuction. You're just taking out the fat cells in that particular area. But what's very interesting is the body's very smart. So if it sees that you don't have some fat in one area that you genetically were supposed to have, it's going to start creating fat cells in another area. And it just goes to show that we are creatures of survival. That's why we have these fat cells, because at one time we were running after Tyrannosaurus Rex and we couldn't eat every day. So thank goodness we had fat cells so we could store it, and then eat for a couple of days. We weren't, dying off and becoming extinct. So like I said, we thought that fat cells were just storage units, but now we know that's not true. They actually play a very important role in terms of endocrine function and balance. And one thing that it does is it secretes, it helps to secrete a hormone called leptin. Now, you might have heard this term before. It's a hormone that's secreted by the fat cells, and it's supposed to tell your brain, I have enough storage, no more. Okay. So once your brain registers, okay, you got enough fat, you're eating, you're storing, then your appetite should turn off. Okay. You shouldn't be eating anymore. Now, appetite, you're happy, you're satiated. And it works against another hormone called ghrelin. Now, ghrelin is a hormone that's found mainly in the stomach. So a good example of this would be, just say in the morning you wake up and you were fasting, right? You were sleeping, so you were fasting, and you woke up and you get into your chores or whatever, and you're moving around and you forget to eat. And then all of a sudden, man, you're so famished. You're like, I'm so hungry. If I took blood and I looked at your ghrelin would be through the roof. Your hormone ghrelin is telling you, go get food, go get food. And again, when you think about it, it's a survival mechanism, right? Because how many cavemen were actually pretty afraid to go after Tyrannosaurus Rex, but you got this hunger hormone that is so strong, that survival and that, will to go, get something is very, very strong. So that's ghrelin. So it's two opposite hormones. Ghrelin makes you hungry. Leptin is supposed to take away your appetite. Okay. But unfortunately, when we get way overweight, it gets all cockamamie. So even though we're supposed to stop eating, we don't. And there is a dysfunction where we have very high leptin levels. And high leptin levels means that you have a lot of fat because your brain just isn't turning it off. It's just telling you, keep eating, keep eating, keep eating. And the more you eat, the more calories you eat, you're only going to make so many structures, and then you're going to start storing it. Okay. So that's why high leptin is to decrease our food intake. But when there's high leptin and you're keeping eating, is a dysfunction of it. So what actually builds fat? Excessive calories will do that. Calories in, calories out. All right. So you're supposed to eat 1,200 calories. You're eating 50 calories and you're sitting on the. What are you expecting? Okay, we're going to store it because the body doesn't want to get rid of anything. It wants to take care of you. So, okay, I'm going to store it. How is it going to store it? It's not going to store it as hair. It's not going to store it as skin. It's going to store it as fat because we're going to save it for later when we need it. Sugar and simple carbohydrates also make fat very readily. And the reason for that is that it's very easy to digest simple carbohydrates. Okay. So a simple carbohydrate would be sugar, things that are white flour, things like that, cereal that, like Captain Crunch kind of cereal. So you digest it and you use whatever you can for glucose. And then once your glucose is at its level, it's got to stick some stuff in storage again. So it's going to store it as something called glycogen. And then once those stores are full, it's going to get stored to fat. So I have a lot of clients that really love their ice cream as a bedtime snack. Okay, that's probably not the best time to eat ice cream if you're trying to change your body fat. And if you look at the behaviors and habits of bodybuilders, what's the first thing they take out of their diet? They take out of their diet. Okay. And there was a whole movement, Sugar Busters Club. And, I think there were lots of books written on sugar and the toxicity of sugar. So if you decrease your body fat and you're eating sugar, it's just not going to work. So how much sugar you're supposed to have, I'm going to tell you that in a minute. So hold that thought. The other thing that builds fat is if we eat too many carbohydrates in general compared to the rest of the macros. And the hardest part about the carbs is that it's the biggest food group and it's the most enjoyable food group for most of us. I mean, yeah, we enjoy our salmon, we might enjoy our steak, okay. But, how much steak can you actually carbohydrates? Oh my gosh, that's fruit, that's salad, that's pretzels, that's ice cream. I mean, it's the biggest food group, so we're going to gravitate to it. Well, we're supposed to be keeping carbs within a certain percentage. So if we eat too many carbs, you're going to gain weight, and that weight is going to be in the form of fat. And this is such a classic case because I work with patients in a hospital as well. When I see patients, especially the ones that have had surgery, and I haven't seen them for a while, and they come back and I do their body composition, I know right away that they've added carbs back in, because their muscles might be okay, but their body fat just shoots straight up. It's just classic. Fat, I wanted to mention that too. Now, a lot of, okay, but I'm eating avocados and nuts. Okay, yeah, that's good. That's really good. You're not eating some drippy lard covered, steak. But remember, fat is still fat. It's still very calorically dense, which still contributes to your calories. So if you're eating 2 avocados a day, that is too much. It's too much. So even though it's a healthy fat, it's too much. Now, I know fat is good for us. We're supposed to be eating fat, but the problem is the American diet, we eat too much fat, and then we use the excuse that it's the good fat. So you still have to keep things within, moderation, whatever that word means. Low protein. Protein is really important to build muscle mass, obviously, lean body mass. So the more body mass that you can build, the less body fat. Or you're very metabolic when you have a lot of muscles. So that's why no matter what age we are, and we talked about this last week, we need to be not just eating our protein, but doing some sort of strength exercises as well, or resistant exercises. Now, of course, the amazing trainers at Glen Eagles can tell you more about that, but it's a really important concept to get rid of body fat. Well, if you're getting rid of one structural component in your body, it's got to be replaced with something else. So you want that to be protein and lean body mass. The other thing is alcohol. I'm not a big fan of alcohol, but the second thing that bodybuilders will get rid of in their diet, alcohol. Alcohol, even though you might say, look, Lil, I have one drink now and then. Some of you might have a nice drink every evening. Well, then it's not going to work for your body. So if your goal is to get to a certain body fat percentage, but you don't want to give up your alcohol, then what are you expecting? Okay, so I just want you to be realistic. If you're choosing to have the drink, then enjoy the drink, but then don't expect your body to change all that dramatically. That's just common sense. It's not, it's just what the body does. The other thing I notice is fad dieting and restrictive diets. If we go too restrictive with calories, well, then your body goes into something called metabolic adaptation. Okay, so again, we're creatures of survival. So if your calories are too low, your body will become a bear. You'll become like a hibernating bear, and everything that you eat, you'll put into fat storage. So that's why even when I'm working with clients and I'm looking at their diet, calories are too low, and I'm trying to encourage them to eat a little bit more, you get a little nervous because you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be cutting my calories. Yes, you're right. You're supposed to be cutting calories, but you still have something called the basal metabolic rate. You still have to have a certain amount of calories to support your metabolism. If you don't have enough to support your metabolism will change, and it'll change by down regulating. It'll get slow. And then what you do eat, it will store because it's afraid, and it'll store it as fat. Okay. The other thing, which is pretty interesting, and there's some research on it, but sugar substitutes, it was just very interesting how in the 1980s, there were so many sugar substitutes that came on the market. And it just so happened that that was the inflection point where all of a sudden the population was getting larger and larger and larger. Now, when you think of all products that are out there, these foods, diet foods, sugar-free food, well, what's in them? Sugar substitutes. So I think, definitely pros and cons. There is some research to show that these sugar substitutes, although they might not contribute to calories. They actually may stimulate part of the brain that still calls for fat production. So, I would recommend, really are strict about your body composition, get rid of the sugar substitutes, get rid of them. Now, I know you're going to have to train your tastes because some of us like our sweet tea and our sweet coffee and things like that. But like anything, you'll get used to it if you give yourself a chance. And just remember that so many names for sugar. One thing that is deceptive about the food industry is that, they're not just going to write sugar. They're going to put some crazy word like dextrose. Of course, you guys are going to know what that is because you come to these lectures. But, the average consumer might not know that dextrose or cane sugar is actually the same thing. It's sugar. So I think it's kind of ridiculous that there are actually 60 different names for sugar. That's kind of ridiculous if you ask me. All right, so why can't we lose body fat? I think we mentioned this. We could be eating too many calories, or too little calorie. So how do you reduce your calories? Well, I know I've shown you this equation before. Now, this equation is just generic, okay, but it's a good start. If you want to lose weight, you take your weight and you multiply by 20. You have to convert it to kilograms, of course, but you multiply by 20. If you want to maintain your weight, then you multiply by 25. And if you want to gain weight, you multiply by either 30 to 35. So this is just an estimation of your calories. Now, believe me, it gets a lot more complicated than this. There are lots of different predictive equations. Those are the things I teach my medical students to do. If you can do indirect calorimetry, that's even better. When you do the in-body, it actually does give you an estimation of your calorie needs and your basal metabolic rate, so you don't have to go through all these calculations. So that's another advantage of doing the in-body. But if you didn't do the in-body and you just wanted to say, all right, Lil, where do I start? Okay, so this is just an example of me. Just say I'm 150 pounds on a good day. That's about 68.2 kilograms because you have to convert it. I multiply by 20 because I want to lose weight. Okay, that means my daily intake of calories is 1364. That's it. I go higher, I'm probably not going to lose weight. If I go too much lower than this, I'm probably not going to lose weight. Okay, so that's my starting place. All right, the other thing you have to think about is protein. And I know we talked about this last week. You can do 0.8 kilograms per, that's to calculate how much protein you need to sustain your life just as you are. But if you're trying to build muscle because you're trying to get rid of body fat, you need to increase your protein. So I usually start off with 1 to 1.2 grams per day. So again, I'm using myself as an example. I'm 68 kilograms. If I wanted to give myself 1.2 grams of protein per day, that's going to give me about 82 grams of protein. Okay, so why is this important? This is important because it's not just about calories, right? It's about your macronutrients as well. So I know I need to stay within 1,300 calories and I need to have about 82 grams of protein from my calories. So let me get my calculator. Okay, because some of you might be saying, okay, how many calories is 82 grams of protein? Okay, you multiply by 4 because there are 4 calories per gram in protein. So that would mean 328 calories. So out of my 1,300 calories, 328 should be coming from protein. And of course, I want to try to do lean proteins the best I can because I don't want a lot of excessive fat. Definitely drink more water. There is, and see, Dorothy's drinking water. Thank you very much. I saw that. That was perfect timing, my friend. Okay, so definitely drink more water. There is a thermodynamic effect of water. There really is on weight loss. And it's so cool because if you drink cold water, icy water, that's actually thermogenic. So it helps you to burn calories. And then I read another article. Remember that brown fat that I was telling you about? If you exercise in really cold weather, you go swimming in the Arctic, that actually allows the body to make more brown fat. How amazing is that? But you know what? How many of us are actually doing that? I don't think many of us. I think if we did a comparison body composition between some of those people in those areas that go into the ice water, they would call it the polar bear club. I would love to see how much brown fat they have. I bet you they have a brown fat, which is really, really good, actually. All right, so what else should we do to lose fat? Well, increase your veggie intake. And I know you might be saying, oh, well, okay, that's obvious, but how does that get rid of my fat? Well, it does so in a way because it will decrease your appetite. So if one challenge is that you can't stick to a 1,300 calorie diet because you're hungry, because I got to tell you, 1,300 calories is, it's not much. It really isn't. So now you might be thinking, my gosh, that ghrelin is going crazy. I'm hungry. What do I do? Well, try to eat veggies because it doesn't really contribute all that much to the calories. It's very low calorie. I mean, think about it. 1 cup of spinach only has 15 calories, 15, that's it. So you can eat a lot of spinach, right? But it also gives you that fiber, and fiber makes you feel full because it expands in your stomach and your intestines. So it starts to slow down digestion. It starts to decrease that ghrelin. So the stomach is happy. And that's how you can actually help use this to help you lose weight and lose body fat. The other thing you need to do is you got to time things. And I know we're going to do a lecture next week after about timing of your food, because that's really important too. Macros are important, proteins, fats, carbs, but it really is important how and when we eat them. So starches, again, a very big food group. What is a starch? Breads, pastas, rice, cereal, right? Starchy vegetables, potatoes and butternut squash. Those are starches. So I like to teach my clients and patients to eat starches right before your workout, especially if you have a very aerobic workout, but you also have to have a little bit after the workout as well. That's for recovery. Okay. So here's an example. Just say I'm keeping my carbohydrates to about 40% of my calories. Okay. So this was just an example because I rounded up. Just say I was eating 1,500 calories. 40% of that is 600. So 600 of my calories can come from carbs. You divide that by 4 because, again, there's 4 calories per gram. So that would mean that I would need about 150 grams of carb per day. When I look at the diaries of some of my patients and clients, you know how many carbs? Oh my gosh, I had a food diary just the other day. I think she was having about 352 carbs, 352 grams. Now that's not impossible to get to because, again, it, it racks up pretty quick. So what I would want you to do, of course, just eat any kind of starch. You might as well get bang for your buck. You want to do a low glycemic starch, something that's, filled with fiber. And the same thing with fruit as well, because fruit is a carbohydrate. Fruit is good for us, but you still want to try and get something that's lower in sugar. So that's why, again, you look at bodybuilders, what are they eating? They're eating so many sweet potatoes. They have sweet potatoes at every meal. Yams, beans or legumes, corn. I know corn gets a bad rap. I think the one thing about corn that I would want you to do is try to do an organic corn. I think my only issue with corn is that it's genetically modified, and it's one of the biggest crops that are genetically modified. And I don't really like genetically modified food. So if you're going to do corn, do organic. Okay. But I think corn is still a good food. It's a whole grain. Okay. Brown rice over white rice, oatmeal, whole grain products. So if you're going to be doing, pastas and things like that, be choosy. Try to do like ancient grains. That's even better. Do farro and barley. Try to be unique. Do the low glycemic starchy vegetables, right? Those would be the butternut squashes. If you're going to do fruits, well, we do know that berries are very low in glycemic index. So any of the berries, strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, and they're very high in fiber. Now, banana is good for you, but don't count banana as a fruit. Count it as a bread. It's a starchy fruit. So it's kind of like a bread. So that's why when you eat very ripe bananas, they taste much sweeter than the kind of like the greenish light yellow ones. So again, if you like your bananas really ripe, they're going to be sweeter and contain more sugar. Pears are actually pretty low in the glycemic index, grapefruit and apples. The only thing with grapefruit is, remember, grapefruit can interfere with some medications. Okay, so if you're on certain, want to make sure that it doesn't contraindicate with grapefruit. Okay. All right, so this almost seems carbs to avoid to cut the body fat. Well, yeah, the sugar in the white flours. Yeah, it is. You got to kind of be strict with it. And it all depends on what your goals are. If you're just saying to yourself, look, I'm a 34% body fat. So can I have the occasional candy? Yeah. But, if I want to get to 30% body fat, I really need to give this up. So would I be able to do that? Would I be willing to do that? Well, I do, because you can't have it. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't. All right. The other thing is the body fat. Now, I mean, the food fat, and I know we had mentioned it. So how much fat are we supposed to have? Well, don't go crazy with fat. Keep it only to about 30% of your calories. So again, I did an equation, 1,500 calories, 30% of that is 450 calories. Now, fat is very dense, so it's 9 calories per gram. So 450 divided by 9 only means 50 grams of fat a day. That's it. So if you're eating a whole bag of almonds, oh, they're almonds. It's not, it's not some cheesecake. Well, you're still getting a lot of fat. So you're probably going over the 50, which isn't good. And this is a perfect example. Let me show you. This is a food diary from my patient. She said I can actually share this. So it's in my lectures a lot. She was having this beautiful salad. It's a beautiful salad. She's having greens and tomatoes and broccoli, avocados. She had oil and vinegar. She put some Cant on it. I mean, come on. She's like, what's the problem here? It's not a hot fudge sundae. And yet when I looked at the amount of fat in the one meal, she was already at 53 grams. So my point here was, if we're trying to keep her fat to about 50 grams, and this is only one meal, she's already blown it. And of course, she still has to have breakfast and dinner. So I don't want you to be disillusioned by the fact that you're having this beautiful salad. That's great. So what we did was we modified it, because I wanted her to have her salad. So she kept with the greens. The olive oil, we decreased it to 1 tablespoon. We increased the vinegar a little bit so she could still have that flavor. And instead of doing 6 ounces of the salmon, we moved it to 3 ounces of salmon. So just making that small change. Oh, and the avocado, she was only having half of it, so I said, well, do you want to reduce it? And she didn't want to compromise there. So we left it. So we focused on the salmon and the oil, and we were able to bring it down significantly. It just meant that she had some more room for the breakfast and dinner. Okay. So that's why I just wanted to show you, don't have that disillusion that, it's the good fat. Yeah, you're right. It's the good fat, but you still have to keep it under control. And I know I've shown this before, but I changed it a little bit to show you how many nuts are actually in 1 ounce. Nuts are good for us. And let me tell you, I think the food industry has done a really good propaganda and marketing campaign to show us how good these nuts are, because we go crazy with them. Almonds are good for us. 1 ounce of nuts is a serving size. So 1 ounce would mean about 23 almonds. Depends on the size. Okay. So think about my previous slide of my client. If she was having 23 almonds in her salad, we've got to add another 14 grams of fat. Okay. The fat, I mean, it adds up. So Brazilian nuts, about 8. Cashews, 18. Chestnuts, 3. 12. Macadamias, 12. Pecans, 15. Pistachios, you can have more. You can have 40. Get the ones with the shell, because it's fun. You kind of peel off the shell and you're eating slower, and then you'll probably have even less. And then walnuts. I like walnuts the best, honestly, not just from the health perspective, because they have a lot of E. They're just a really, really good nut for you. Rarely do I find patients and clients trigger on walnuts. A trigger means that you just really enjoy them. You're just triggering. You're eating. You're not really, you're kind of mindlessly eating them. Walnuts, I don't see people mindlessly eating walnuts. I really don't. So this is probably one of my favorite nuts in terms of, but look at it, it's got 18 grams of fat in 7 walnuts. That's a lot. Okay. All right. Sorry, got to pick on the alcohol. Look, we enjoy our wine, we enjoy our little cocktail, but you know what? Look at this. Besides the fact that it can damage the liver and kidney, it actually lowers testosterone. Now, both men and women have testosterone, and testosterone is what helps build lean body mass. The lower it goes, body fat you're going to have, and also fatigue. It also suppresses fat metabolism. In other words, if you think you're going to burn your fat through your exercise, but you had a drink, it's not going to happen. Actually, your body is really unique. When you have a drink with your dinner, you're not going to burn any of your dinner. All that fat metabolism is out of your body. Again, it's probably a protective mechanism. It's pretty interesting. Alcohol also in some people increases that hunger and that appetite too. So, again, what do you want to give up? Do you want to give up the hot fudge sundae, or do you want to give up the wine, or maybe both? Now, drinking green tea before your workout actually really helps your concentration for the workout. Now, it does have some caffeine, so if you're watching your caffeine, be careful. But what's interesting is that it does have another ingredient in it that counteracts the caffeine. But this actually helps to kind of speed up momentarily. It's not forever. So it's just like this little surge. And the more calories you can burn, especially, it's almost like that high intensity aerobic exercise that you do, giving it the all out, that's going to burn fat. It's kind of like the same thing with green tea. It gives you that little nudge, right? So green tea is good to get rid of fat. Now, I know last week we talked about whey protein. Whey protein is amazing. So if you're trying to lose body fat and build muscle, this is definitely something to add in. There are so many different protein shakes and protein powders out there. See if there's something that you can incorporate in your diet. Just remember, it's not a snack. It might be a meal replacement, or if you're using it as a snack, it still has to fit within your calories. Okay, so it's not a food. You might want to also make your food kind of hot. Now, I can't do this anymore, but there is evidence to show the hot, spicy peppers also increases your metabolism, but again, just momentarily, okay? But if you can give it that little surge, whatever help it can get, it's actually called the thermogenic effective food. That's what it's called, thermogenic effective food, TEF. That means that when we eat and we digest, we're actually expending calories. So there are certain foods that help us to expend those calories even more. So that would be hot pepper, that would be cold water, that would be green tea, those kinds of things. The other thing too is you might want to consider adding an omega-3 fish oil, but like always, my disclaimer is try any supplement or add anything to your diet, always talk to your doctor and your pharmacist, because remember, over-the-counter supplements are not innocuous substances. They can interfere with your current medications or things in your health. So just be careful. But what we do see is that the omega-3s helps with blood flow. And whenever you can improve the blood flow going through your body, that is a good thing. That helps to rev up metabolism, that helps to nourish your organs, that helps to build your muscles. And if you're building your muscles, you're getting rid of body fat. So, just double check if you can take it. And 1,000 milligrams is pretty high. If you're going higher than that, again, it really needs to be supervised by a doctor. Now, this is controversial. Now, in a couple, I'm going to teach you about intermittent fasting. So this actually contradicts that a little bit. This is saying that if you eat 5 to 6 small meals a day, which just equates to maybe 3 meals and 2 to 3 snacks, that can actually help you burn fat. Now, where did this theory come from? This theory came from the fact that when we release insulin, insulin is that hormone that brings down glucose, and then you use things for energy, and then you store the rest. If we don't eat for a long period of time, what happens is that we get these insulin surges. And insulin is very lipogenic, which means that whenever we secrete it, we build fat. That's what the do with it. So the theory is if you don't surge your insulin and you can keep your blood sugars relatively steady, that's going to help you burn your fat. Okay, I've been in the field for a long time. This does not work for everybody. It could actually be called a grazing behavior, which can actually lead to more calories by the end of the day. So you'll see as we talk about different eating patterns, I don't think one size fits all. I think you have to see what works best for you. I know that I have some clients, they eat 3 meals a day, period, no snacks, and they're doing amazing. Then I have another client that I'm thinking of. She does 5 to 6 small meals a day. She's doing amazing. Then I have another client, he's doing intermittent fasting, does amazing. Okay. So I don't think that your eating pattern one size fits all. You have to see really what is meeting your needs, okay, and your goals as well. The one thing I can say though is if you are on diet medication, this is usually what the diabetic educators will tell you. You need to eat in order to take your diabetic medication. Now, it seems counterintuitive to me, okay, but I'm not a diabetic educator per se. I just feel like, to eat to support medication seems backwards to me. I don't know, it just does. But if that's what you have to do to make sure that your medication is working and that you're not crashing in terms of your blood sugar, then maybe that's something to talk to your doctor about. I would rather you take less medication and food. But again, there's all different treatments, right? Another thing is called carb cycling. Carb cycling is kind of fun. I actually have a client on carb cycling right now, a younger guy, and he's very, very athletic, but he wants to really improve his body fat percentage. And he's almost a vegetarian, so that's what makes it a little difficult. But we do carb cycling, which means one day we go super high. We go on the high end, especially when he's doing his workout. And then another day we go super low. So your body gets confused. It's like, oh, what's today? Is today low or high? And it really doesn't get the chance to interpret the message to store fat. And so far it's working for him. It's a little challenging, like I said, because he's a vegetarian. So on those low carb days, his meals aren't all that exciting, I have to say. All right. The other thing too is just be careful of the snacking, because that's the other thing. We pick, we grab, we're watching TV, we're on the computer, we're, reading a book, and we're kind of eating, and we set up society that way. That's what we do, with the kids. Oh, have a snack. Oh, have a snack. Oh, stop screaming. Have a snack. Oh, you got an A, have a snack. Everything is centered around food. So 100 calories, that just adds up. So how many 100-calorie snacks are you going to go for? So I have some clients, they'll say to me, I took a piece of deli. I took a turkey deli. Okay. One slice of turkey deli, depending upon how thick the slice is, might actually have 50 to 100 calories. So how many times are you actually going in the refrigerator and doing that? So all I'm saying is that 100 calories adds up pretty quick, right? Some of those snack items, they try to do it for you and portion it out. 150 calorie snacks. Just be careful. It doesn't mean you have 5 of them all day, right? Okay. This is another thing, if you can help it. Try not to eat before bed. And when I say right before bed, try to give yourself at least 1 to 2 hours before you go to bed. Now, again, it's controversial, right? Because some people will say to me, oh, what if, I eat late at night? Okay, you still kind of meet your calorie needs. But remember, at night, a lot of things are happening when you're sleeping. Okay. So not only are you dreaming, but your body's healing and your body's secreting certain hormones. And if you've got food in your stomach, it just figures, oh, okay, kind of like a squirrel. You go get the nuts, you eat, and then you sleep. Okay. That means you want to store it. Okay, so if you can, try to go to bed on kind of an empty stomach a little bit. It's a little uncomfortable. Some of you might be saying, well, I can't sleep if I have an empty stomach. That's true. I understand that. But just know that when you're eating late at night, your body's still digesting. You're not expending a lot of energy. Even if you're, having fun in bed, you're not burning as many calories as you think. Trust me. And that means you're going to store it. Okay. So try not to eat, it says 3 hours, but at least 1 to 2, if more. Okay. And that's kind of the concept of intermittent fasting as well. You cut yourself off at a certain time and then you're fasting. And we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. All right, so you already know to incorporate the cardio and weight training. I'm not going to go deep into that. You already have these amazing trainers that can teach you about all that. Now, I wanted to show you this wacky picture. This wacky picture is actually the Krebs cycle. It's also called the citric acid cycle. I don't know if you remember that from biology all those years ago, but this is actually what produces energy, right? And this Krebs cycle works beautifully as long as you don't have any vitamin deficiencies. And what's so crazy is that a lot of us have at least one vitamin deficiency that you might not even know about. I know the doctors test the vitamin D. They might test a B12, that's great, but they don't test the rest of it. And that's because insurance won't reimburse them. So look at what your diet is. If you're not really a big fruit eater or vegetable eater, you don't drink dairy, things like that, you might be deficient in certain vitamins and minerals that are necessary to make energy to burn fat. So same concept. If you think you need a multivitamin, you need to talk to your doctor or pharmacist first. And remember, not all multivitamins are created equal. Maybe you don't need a multivitamin with iron. That's why, different brands make iron free. Make sure you don't have excessive calcium, so there is a balance. But point here is you may need a multivitamin, a daily multivitamin. As a matter of fact, the American Medical Association made the announcement, I think it was like 8 years ago, that every American should take a multivitamin. They just came out with that blanket statement because they said, even if your diet is perfect, the food supply isn't perfect. Okay. But I'm a dietitian, so I don't like to make those blanket statements. All I can say is if you think you need a multivitamin because your diet is suboptimal, then talk to your doctor first and maybe you need to take one. It doesn't mean take these crazy amounts. I have a patient, 33-year-old guy that came to see me, and his doctor referred him to me because he was going into liver failure. And he was so afraid of that because his father actually passed away in his 50s of liver failure. Okay, when he came to my office with a hefty bag of supplements and herbals, that was the problem right there. I'm not kidding. It was a hefty bag. He must have had like 30 different supplements, and that was actually causing him liver problems. Okay. All right, so cut back on all the bad fats. Yeah, you can. So what are the bad fats? The saturated fats, right? The stuff that tastes good, right? The Chinese ribs, the potato chips, the fried fish, things like that. They taste good, but it's really not all that great for us. So cut back on that. Oh, there we go. The French fries, the butter. That's my challenge, butter, right? All right, some other fat burning tips. Well, we got to de-stress because stress hormones make fat. Remember, we're organisms. We are just beautiful organisms that interact with the environment. So if we're very stressed out, our body will protect us by storing fat. How obnoxious is that? So those stress hormones are like the cortisols and things like that. So when we're stressed out, you're going to hold on to weight, definitely. Try to get enough sleep. I know that's a challenge for some of us too. I know we had a lecture on that. Unfortunately, when we don't get enough sleep, that actually increases those fat storing hormones. Again, all of a protective mechanism, but you're kind of like a bear. That's what happens. Be careful eating healthy because I think I mentioned that throughout and then be realistic. Try not to define yourself by the scale. Define yourself by how well you feel, by how much energy you have, by how your clothes fit, whatever your goals are. You are not defined by just a number on a scale, but it's good to get baselines just so you know what they are. All right, the other thing is definitely start or continue an exercise program. It's so wonderful. You have an amazing, amazing group at Glen Eagles, Karen and her team. So that's a beautiful thing. Definitely utilize that. Cut back gradually, but meaningfully. Okay. If you just cut back one thing and you think there's going to be some miraculous event going on, yeah, probably not. And have to do a couple of different things, but also don't overwhelm yourself. Don't just try to clean house now because then it's not realistic. So you have to see what works for you. I have some people that are very restrictive eaters and I have some people that just want to do things gradually. So you have to see in your lifestyle. Definitely try to drink your water for sure. Cut out your junk foods, your alcohol. We mentioned it. Kind of make make a diet plan. And I think the best way to make a diet plan is track yourself. Now, the one thing as a dietitian that everybody always wants, my clients, my patients, they all want a menu plan. And it always makes me chuckle because I'll do one for you, no problem. But nobody follows it. I know you don't because I wouldn't. Okay. What we follow is what we're used to in terms of our culture and our favorite foods and things that we know how to cook and accessibility to food. So if you get a menu plan, I always tell my clients, just look at the amounts. So if there's a food on there that you don't like, don't eat it, but just look at the amount. So if I put tilapia on there and you're like, ew, I don't eat tilapia. Okay, so eat salmon. But if it says 3 ounces, it doesn't mean go to 4. So stick to different sizes. But the best thing to do, what I found in my career, is you have to take ownership of it. So track yourself. There are so many great, easy apps now. The MyFitnessPal, the Barrytastic, the Spark People. There's so many easy apps. That's really the only you know what you're doing. And you can look at it and say, okay, I need to make a change here. Okay, so track yourself and definitely be consistent for sure. Remember, I always say good health, good weight, poor health. It's a cumulative effect of good nutrition or poor nutrition. If we blow it on one day, that's not a big deal. I have a client that I saw today. I hadn't seen him since December. So I'm seeing him for diets. And he said to me, oh man, during Christmas, I went crazy. I just ate everything. I ate everything. So he's getting back on track. But what was really interesting is that he lost weight. He lost weight. So he was actually controlled more than he thought he was, which was kind of cool. Definitely be realistic, but start your plan and enjoy the process. It's not about, torture, enjoying it, right? All right. So that's my spiel about how to get rid of body fat. Any questions? Oh, that's good. More people joined in. Thanks for joining, you guys. I appreciate it. Any questions for me?
Yeah.
Tell me.
I got 2 questions. One is,
hi, Robert.
How do you determine your body fat level?
Okay, so the best thing to do is go see Karen for the in-body. So it looks like a scale and you go on barefoot and she tells you other parameters and it does something called bioelectrical impedance. So it measures the movement through your body and then the machine calculates your lean body mass, your visceral fat, your body fat. Yeah, so talk to Karen about getting an in-body done.
Mm-hmm. Second question is, and this is a technical question of the Zoom, and it's for everybody. Is anybody else experiencing periodic skipping of the audios?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. There's a lot of it.
Yeah, maybe it's a bad connection. I know it's pretty cloudy over here where I am. I'm over here in Southwest Ranches. It's total cloud cover and rain.
Okay, I had it the last time too. I was just wondering if it was maybe something here, but at our house or with my iPad. But
I wonder, you know what? Maybe when just review the recording, even if you don't listen all over again, and see if it's happening in the recording. And then if it is, then it's on our end here.
Yeah. Well, how do you get to the recording again?
Oh, you have to ask Karen.
Oh, okay.
Karen periodically puts out in her weekly newsletter videos, and you just click on it.
Excellent. Okay. Oh, I have some questions in the chat. So somebody asked a really good question about body mass index versus fat level. I love that question. So body mass index is a ratio of how much you weigh compared to how tall you are. The problem with that number is it doesn't take into effect your age, your gender, or your body composition. So if I had The Rock here, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, his body mass index would measure super obesity. He's not super obese because he has all the muscles. So that's why, again, as a nutritionist, I think I would want to see different parameters. I don't want to just see body mass index because that's one of the flaws of BMI. Yeah. And then we've got a hand. this. And this is Judith. Judith, you have your hand up. You have to unmute yourself, I think. Or I'll try to unmute you, but I can't unmute you from here. Or you can type it in the chat.
Wait, unmute. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Good. I just want to conclude. Water cold is not as good as water warm.
Oh, okay. So good question. Warm water or room temperature water absorbs really quickly through the stomach. So it's ideal to drink that if you're dehydrated or you're out playing tennis, you want to hydrate. Okay. So that's the purpose of that. But if you drink really cold water, it's supposed to help you burn more calories. So if you're trying to burn calories, make it ice water.
Oh, okay. One other thing. If I do swim at 65 degrees, is that good or bad?
Nice. That's really good. That's really good. Yes. The colder, the better.
And I'm burning fat, right?
You're burning fat. You're burning fat because your body actually has to work to keep that body temperature normal. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Good question, Judith. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, you guys, that was a lot of fun. Any other questions or comments? All right, you guys have a super night. I'll see you guys next week.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Learned a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.